He walked slowly across the parking lot, his steps uneven, the weight of old battles reflected in the limp that never truly healed. Most people did not even notice him, but the influencer did. With a phone already recording and a grin too wide to hide, he pointed, laughed, and mocked the veteran's struggle as if pain were entertainment. The crowd around hesitated, torn between discomfort and silence, while the comments poured in online, flooding the live stream with cruel jokes. The veteran lowered his gaze, not because he was weak, but because he had learned long ago that dignity often survives best in silence. But that day, something unexpected ignited. Just a few meters away, the low growl of engines echoed like thunder rolling across a quiet sky. A group of seasoned bikers, patched jackets worn by the roads they had conquered, turned their heads as the laughter cut through the air. They recognized the limp, the exhausted posture, the familiar shadow in the eyes of the man being mocked. It was the look of someone who carried memories too heavy for any camera to capture. In that instant, the influencer's stunt stopped being entertainment. It became a line crossed. The influencer's smile faltered when the bikers approached, their presence towering like guardians of a forgotten code. Phones lowered, whispers grew louder, and the energy around them shifted. The veteran tried to walk away quietly, unwilling to escalate. But the bikers gently stopped him, offering not rage, but respect. They stood firmly beside him, forming a wall between cruelty and honor, reminding everyone watching that compassion is louder than humiliation. As the influencer's confidence crumbled under the weight of dozens of judging eyes, his livestream chat exploded, not with praise, but with outrage. The same audience he hoped would boost his fame now turned against him, forcing him to confront the humanity he underestimated. His voice trembled, his posture shrank, and the camera he once weaponized now reflected his own fragility. The consequences of chasing attention at any cost unfolded in real time. And when the biker leader placed a hand on the veteran's shoulder, the crowd fell silent. There were no speeches, only a quiet moment of acknowledgement between men who understood sacrifice. The influencer, tears gathering before millions online, learned that honor is not measured by views or followers, but by how we treat those who have already bled for our freedom. That day, the road whispered a lesson many had forgotten. The influencer tried to smooth things over with a nervous laugh, insisting it was just a joke, but the damage had already echoed far beyond his intention. The veteran stood quietly, shoulders heavy beneath memories no camera could hold, yet his silence spoke louder than any defense. The bikers did not raise their voices. They simply watched, their steady gazes revealing a lifetime of witnessing injustice disguised as humor. The air around them tightened, the livestream audience sensing a shift, drawn deeper into a story unfolding beyond the screen. Curiosity turned into tension, and tension into unexpected empathy. Whispers spread through the crowd as someone muttered that the veteran had served overseas, rumors rippling like wind through tall grass. Every detail added to the weight of what had happened, creating a storm inside the influencer that no filter could hide. His followers finally saw the real consequence of chasing shock value for attention, understanding how fragile dignity becomes when exploited for entertainment. The biker beside the veteran spoke softly, asking how long the pain in his leg had lingered. The veteran answered without bitterness, explaining that a blast overseas had changed the shape of his life forever. His voice trembled only once, when he admitted the loneliness that followed him home. The influencer shifted uncomfortably, feeling millions of eyes pushing against his skin. He lowered his phone as if it were suddenly burning his hand, realizing his need for validation had crossed a boundary too sacred to ignore. The biker leader's voice cut through the tension with steady warmth, acknowledging the veteran's service without turning it into spectacle. He spoke of respect, sacrifice, and the quiet courage that does not need applause. The crowd listened, captivated not by outrage, but by the sincerity woven into every word. The influencer's face flushed red as he realized how deeply he had misjudged the moment. Online, comments flooded with disappointment, urging him to apologize, not for the camera, but for the man standing in front of him. His calculated image fell apart, exposing layers of insecurity he had always tried to hide behind pranks and exaggerated expressions. The camera no longer framed him as the confident entertainer he pretended to be. It revealed him as a frightened boy who had never learned the weight of empathy. As the tension eased just enough to breathe, the veteran finally raised his eyes. He did not ask for pity, nor did he demand humiliation in return. Instead, his voice was steady as he explained how jokes like these cut deeper than any wound from battle. They reminded him that some scars are invisible, ignored by crowds hungry for laughter. His words lingered in the air, not as complaint, but as quiet truth that pressed on the hearts of everyone watching. The livestream audience felt themselves leaning forward, captivated by a narrative richer than any stage stunt, wondering how the influencer would respond. The influencer swallowed hard, trying to form an apology that felt authentic, but the words tangled at the edge of his tongue. The bikers watched him carefully, not to intimidate, but to ensure sincerity. The veteran remained stoic, waiting with the same patience forged under foreign skies, where silence often meant survival. The crowd drifted closer, drawn by something more compelling than conflict: raw vulnerability unfolding in public view. Millions online held their breath, hungry to see whether remorse could bloom in the soil of humiliation. Finally, the influencer stepped forward, voice trembling as he admitted he had chased views more than values. He confessed that behind the polished photos and rehearsed jokes, he felt constantly unseen, terrified that fading from relevance meant fading from existence. His insecurity spilled out like a confession, shocking followers who believed his confidence was real. The veteran listened intently, eyes softening just enough to show understanding. For the first time, the influencer's words reached beyond self-image and touched something true. The biker leader nodded, acknowledging the courage it takes to own one's mistakes in front of millions. He reminded the crowd that everyone carries battles others cannot see, whether fought overseas or inside their own minds. He spoke about responsibility, how those with a platform must choose between tearing others down or lifting them up. His words resonated like thunder beneath calm skies, striking chords deep within hearts, watching through screens they once used to escape their own struggles. The narrative shifted again, revealing growth where guilt once stood alone. Some viewers began sharing their own experiences in the comments, speaking of siblings who served, grandparents who limped home, and friends who never truly returned. Stories unfolded like pages of a forgotten book, each revealing why respect matters more than entertainment. The influencer's eyes filled with tears as he saw the pain his joke echoed, rippling across countless strangers' lives. He realized that the world was listening, not to punish him, but to teach him. The camera captured every heartbeat of his transformation. When a moment settled, the veteran finally extended a hand. His grip was firm, steady, not born of pity or forgiveness, but mutual recognition. The influencer accepted with a shaky breath, knowing the gesture meant far more than words could express. The crowd exhaled together, tension melting into relief. Engines rumbled softly in the background, as if the road itself approved of the lesson learned. And in that quiet victory, both men understood something deeper: that growth often blooms from the soil of humility, witnessed by eyes that once expected nothing more than entertainment. As the atmosphere softened, one of the bikers stepped closer and noticed the faint emblem on the veteran's jacket, a symbol worn only by those who had completed missions few dared to speak of. Respect rippled through the club in a silent wave, their eyes meeting his not with pity, but with recognition. The influencer watched this exchange, realizing how deeply he had misjudged the man he mocked. For the first time, he truly saw the weight behind the limp, the history behind the quiet posture, and the countless nights where haunting memories replaced sleep. The livestream audience, once amused, now felt a stirring in their chests, as if some ancient code of honor had been awakened. The biker leader signaled the group to surround the area, not to intimidate, but to create space, a barrier separating sincerity from spectacle. Phones lowered across the crowd, and for a rare moment in the digital age, privacy returned to the wounded soul standing at the center. The influencer hesitated, camera still in his hand, torn between capturing redemption and honoring the sacred silence unfolding. Slowly, almost reluctantly, he tapped the screen and ended the stream. Millions witnessed that small act, understanding its gravity. The comments section froze mid-sentence, echoing the moment's quiet transformation. The veteran's shoulders seemed to lift slightly, as if the weight of the world had been eased by a simple gesture of respect. He spoke softly, explaining how battles do not end when soldiers return home. They continue in memories, dreams, and the struggle to walk among crowds who have forgotten sacrifice. His voice cracked only once, when describing friends who never returned. The bikers listened attentively, nodding in silent solidarity, their own scars reflecting under dim lights. The influencer swallowed hard, realizing his notion of suffering had always been shallow compared to the depth before him. Overwhelmed, the influencer sank onto a nearby bench, head buried in his hands. He confessed that his life had become a constant performance, chasing likes like oxygen. Each prank had been part of a mask he could never remove, a mask that had grown heavier with every forced laugh. His vulnerability spilled out raw, revealing the boy behind the persona, someone desperate to feel seen, to matter beyond the glow of a screen. The crowd's judgment softened as they recognized a struggle many secretly carried. The line between villain and victim blurred, painted not in black and white, but in shades of pain and longing. The veteran approached and placed a steady hand on the influencer's shoulder. He spoke of strength, not measured by muscle or medals, but by the courage to face one's own reflection without flinching. He reminded him that healing cannot begin until honesty enters the room. For the first time, the influencer looked up without performing. Tears clung to his lashes, not curated for sympathy, but born from quiet surrender. Engines hummed in the distance, as if the road itself listened to their words, engraving them into asphalt like scripture. The audience, though silent behind screens, felt a powerful connection, the kind only truth can forge. After a long moment, one of the bikers invited both men to a nearby diner. The influencer hesitated, worried whispers would follow him inside, but the veteran reassured him with a nod that carried decades of courage. Together, they walked side by side, one limping from a war overseas, the other stumbling from battles fought in the eyes of strangers. The diner's lights flickered warmly as the door opened, and the smell of coffee and comfort wrapped around them like a gentle embrace. Patrons looked up, surprised by the unlikely group, then quietly returned to their meals, sensing something important unfolding. Seated at a corner booth, the biker leader ordered coffee for everyone. He leaned back and began sharing stories of brothers lost along winding highways, lessons learned through storms and starless nights. His voice carried wisdom carved by miles and mistakes, reminding them that life often teaches through pain before it ever rewards through peace. The influencer listened with wide eyes, absorbing every detail, as if hearing truth for the first time. The veteran rested his hands on the table, feeling the tremor of memory pass like a quiet ghost through his fingers. The influencer confessed that he had grown numb to feelings, focusing only on algorithms and trends, believing emotion was weakness in a world of constant judgment. A younger biker leaned in, explaining that numbness was not strength, it was armor worn too long. He spoke of his own struggle returning from service, of losing himself in silence until brotherhood pulled him back. The influencer's chest tightened, realizing how many lives mirrored the unseen battles he had mocked. Around the booth, understanding blossomed, connecting stories once lonely in their suffering. As the conversation deepened, the veteran revealed a quiet truth. The limp was not his greatest burden. It was the absence of being understood. The room grew still, as if every chair leaned closer. He spoke of nights spent staring at ceilings, hearing echoes of explosions long gone, wishing someone would sit beside him without asking him to be strong. The influencer felt tears slide down his cheek, no longer able to hide behind filters. In that diner, pain was not entertainment. It was shared humanity, stitched together by listening hearts. When plates arrived, no one rushed the moment. They ate slowly, savoring presence rather than performance. Outside the window, rain began to fall softly, tapping against the glass like a gentle reminder of how fragile people truly are. The influencer lifted his gaze, voice softened by sincerity, and asked how he could change. The biker leader smiled, telling him that growth does not happen overnight. It happens one choice at a time, one act of kindness after another. The influencer nodded, absorbing wisdom he never found scrolling through screens. And somewhere beyond the neon lights, the storm eased, leaving streets that glistened like second chances. When the rain finally stopped, the group stepped outside in the cool night air, the pavement shimmering like freshly polished glass. The influencer hesitated on the sidewalk, unsure if he truly belonged among men stitched together by battlefields he had never seen. The veteran noticed his hesitation and gently reassured him with a simple gesture, a pat on the back that held more meaning than any applause online. The engines of the motorcycles rumbled softly, almost like heartbeats synchronized with the moment's weight. Passers-by glanced curiously, sensing something deeper than a chance encounter. One of the bikers handed the influencer a small patch, worn and faded, symbolizing respect rather than membership. He explained its purpose, a reminder to stand up for those who cannot, to speak with empathy before testing boundaries. The influencer stared at it in disbelief, overwhelmed by the unexpected honor. Tears welled again as he realized how undeserving he felt, but the veteran assured him that remorse paired with effort could forge new paths. The audience, though now absent behind screens, would never know this part, but sometimes the most important changes happen away from cameras. As they walked toward the parking lot where everything began, the influencer felt a knot tightening in his chest. Faces from earlier lingered in shadows, some still whispering, phones tucked away, but eyes lingering with curiosity. The influencer instinctively lowered his gaze, afraid of judgment. The veteran, however, raised his head, posture steady, teaching by example. He whispered that dignity is not something granted by others. It is carried within, shaped by choices made when no one is cheering. The words rooted themselves deep in the influencer's heart, seeds of growth ready to bloom. A small crowd began to gather again, but this time their expressions were different. No longer entertained, they felt invested in redemption. One by one, strangers approached and thanked the veteran for his service, offering sincere smiles rather than viral attention. The influencer watched quietly, realizing how deeply a single act of respect could ripple through a community. An older woman placed a gentle hand on his arm, telling him everyone is more than their worst moment. That simple sentence cracked something open inside him, allowing light to replace shame. The biker leader mounted his motorcycle last, looking at the influencer with a steady gaze that held both warning and promise. He reminded him that life offers crossroads every day. Choose compassion, and you will never walk alone. The engines roared to life, vibrations rolling across the parking lot like thunder, announcing a new storm of purpose. As the bikes disappeared into the night, the influencer stood beside the veteran, patch clutched against his heart, determined to rewrite how he would use his voice in the world. And in the silence that followed, hope whispered more loudly than any crowd. Days passed, and the viral clip continued to circulate online, but the narrative changed dramatically. Instead of outrage, comments shifted toward compassion, praising the veteran's grace and the biker's quiet strength. The influencer's followers watched closely, waiting to see if his remorse extended beyond a single moment. He knew this was no time for grand gestures. Redemption requires consistency. So he began posting not pranks, but stories, highlighting invisible battles fought by veterans, first responders, and everyday people who carried scars unseen by public eyes. His audience noticed the shift immediately. Some viewers accused him of faking sincerity, assuming his transformation was just another strategy for attention. He answered not with anger, but with patience, understanding that trust must be earned, not demanded. The veteran occasionally appeared in videos, not as a spectacle, but as a voice guiding discussions on mental health, loneliness, and the weight of returning from war. Their relationship, once built upon humiliation, now anchored itself in mutual respect. Slowly, skepticism began to fade, replaced by admiration for vulnerability presented without filters. Meanwhile, the biker club watched from afar, observing whether the influencer's actions aligned with his promises. Their code demanded authenticity, and the road had a way of exposing those who merely pretended. Weeks turned into months, and the influencer continued his quiet mission, fundraising for injured veterans, partnering with mental health organizations, and visiting shelters where forgotten soldiers slept in silence. Each visit left him humbled, his heart expanding with stories etched into the faces of those society overlooked. The veteran accompanied him whenever he could, guiding him through spaces where emotional walls stood higher than any physical barrier. Sometimes, late at night, they would sit together in silence, sharing coffee and memories too heavy for casual conversation. The influencer learned to listen, to comfort without trying to fix, and to offer presence rather than performance. Slowly, the limp he once mocked became a symbol, reminding him that pain does not diminish value, it deepens it. Eventually, mainstream media caught wind of the unlikely partnership. Reporters reached out for interviews, eager to sensationalize the story. The influencer declined every opportunity, refusing to turn growth into entertainment again. Instead, he redirected attention to the program's changing lives behind the scenes. His audience, witnessing humility not driven by views or sponsorships, felt something rare, genuine leadership blooming from past mistakes. And somewhere on a quiet highway, engines roared approval into the night, carrying the news to brothers who understood the language of redemption. As the seasons changed, so did the conversations within the influencer's community. Comments once filled with mocking jokes transformed into stories shared by people who had relatives deployed overseas or who struggled silently with anxiety and depression. He began hosting live sessions, not to entertain through shock, but to listen, giving space for voices often ignored in the noise of social media. Slowly, vulnerability became the new currency of his platform, replacing superficial trends with meaningful dialogue. The veteran joined occasionally, offering calm guidance like a lighthouse cutting through fog. One evening, during a live stream, a young viewer confessed they were considering ending their life, feeling invisible in a world obsessed with perfection. The chat exploded with concern, but it was the veteran's steady voice that calmed the storm. He spoke gently about nights when loneliness felt heavier than any battlefield, and how asking for help is an act of courage, not weakness. The influencer's eyes filled with tears as he realized the magnitude of the responsibility he now carried. Gone were the days of chasing laughs. He now worked to protect hearts. After the stream ended, the influencer sat quietly, overwhelmed by the weight of human emotion. He called the veteran, who answered without hesitation, and together they discussed resources, hotlines, and ways to support viewers beyond the screen. The Biker Club offered connections to counselors, shelters, and veteran-focused therapists, eager to help in any way they could. The influencer realized that change does not require perfection. It requires effort, consistency, and compassion woven through small actions. Every step forward was a testament to the lesson learned in that parking lot months ago. News of these moments spread through online communities, and many who once laughed at pranks now tuned in for comfort. Teachers reached out, asking if they could share clips in classrooms to teach empathy. Parents thanked the influencer for addressing issues their children refused to discuss. The veteran remained humble, reminding everyone that healing is collective. It thrives when shared gently. Together, they created something the internet rarely witnessed: growth nurtured by accountability. Yet despite progress, not everyone accepted the influencer's transformation. A group of critics resurfaced old clips, trying to reignite outrage, claiming redemption was a calculated performance. The influencer faced them calmly, acknowledging his past mistakes without deflecting or justifying. His tone was steady, proving growth through humility rather than defensiveness. Observing this, the veteran smiled quietly, recognizing strength not in defiance, but in grace. The Biker Club, hearing whispers of renewed criticism, simply nodded. They understood that authenticity reveals itself not in silence, but in how one responds to storms. One afternoon, the influencer received a message from a school requesting he speak about respect, bullying, and digital responsibility. The mere thought terrified him, Public speaking without the armor of humor felt like stepping into battle unarmed. The veteran encouraged him, saying growth often waits on the other side of fear. With shaky hands and a pounding heart, he accepted. When the day arrived, he walked into the auditorium, greeted by hundreds of young eyes reflecting curiosity and skepticism. As he spoke, his voice trembled at first, but honesty steadied him. He shared the story of a day he mocked a man for limping, expecting laughter but receiving a lesson instead. He described the humiliation, regret, and transformation that followed. Students leaned forward, captivated not by a polished speech, but by vulnerability. The veteran sat toward the back, nodding proudly as he watched fragments of truth assemble into something hopeful on stage. When the influencer finished, silence filled the room. Then applause erupted like thunder. Afterward, students gathered around, eager to share their own stories. Some had parents who served. Others struggled with bullying or fear of being forgotten. The influencer listened intently, offering encouragement where he could, and inviting the veteran to speak with those who carried heavier scars. The school counselor expressed awe at the honesty displayed, thanking them both for turning pain into purpose. As they walked back to the parking lot, the influencer felt lighter, as though every step unshackled another piece of guilt. That evening, as they rode home on the backs of the motorcycles, wind rushing past, the influencer finally understood why the bikers loved the road. It offered clarity, stripping away noise until only truth remained. The veteran shouted over the hum of engines that life is not defined by mistakes, but by the courage to rise after them. The influencer closed his eyes, letting those words tattoo themselves across his heart, knowing he would carry them long after the ride ended. When they arrived at their meeting spot, the biker leader stepped forward and placed a new patch in the influencer's hand. This one was brighter, stitched with symbols reflecting guidance and advocacy. The leader explained that respect is earned through action, not apology, and that the influencer had proven his commitment. Tears blurred the influencer's vision as the patch glowed beneath streetlights. Surrounded by engines, leather jackets, and quiet nods, he felt accepted, not for perfection, but for growth. The veteran stood beside him and whispered something only he could hear, that forgiveness is not a gift given freely, but one earned through the slow burn of accountability. The influencer nodded, feeling gratitude swell within him. In that moment, he realized his limp was emotional. He had walked unevenly through life until empathy became his brace. And, as engines roared like thunder once more, he felt ready to continue rewriting his story, one meaningful step at a time. Weeks later, the influencer found himself invited to a community event honoring veterans returning home. Rows of chairs lined the town square, filled with families holding framed photos, some smiling proudly, others faded by time. The veteran walked beside him, nodding respectfully to familiar faces. The influencer felt humbled just being present, sensing stories whispered in the air like ghosts finding rest. As he approached the stage, he noticed a father holding his son tightly, both wearing matching dog tags, their eyes reflecting both pride and pain. It was a reminder that sacrifice does not belong only to soldiers, it belongs to the families who wait. The influencer stepped up to speak, voice steady despite nerves swirling like storm clouds. He shared the moment in the parking lot that shifted his life, admitting how ignorance had blinded him to the depth of another's battle. As he spoke, he saw heads nod, some eyes welling with tears. He spoke not as a celebrity, but as a student of empathy, learning from the quiet dignity of those who served. When he finished, applause washed over him, not loud, but warm, like a thank you whispered by countless hearts. Afterward, a young boy approached, tugging gently at the influencer's sleeve. He explained that his older brother had returned from deployment, but no longer smiled the way he used to. The boy asked if the influencer could make a video reminding people to be patient, to listen, and to notice when someone is hurting silently. The influencer crouched down to meet his gaze and promised he would. The boy hugged him tightly before running back to his family, leaving behind a weight of purpose heavier than any microphone. Later that evening, the veteran and the influencer sat on a bench overlooking the quiet square. The veteran shared a story he had never told before, about a friend who returned with invisible wounds and struggled to be understood. His voice cracked, revealing heartbreak buried beneath decades of silence. The influencer listened, absorbing each word as though catching falling glass pieces before they could shatter. When the story ended, neither spoke. Silence became a companion, wrapping them both in understanding. As the sun dipped behind rooftops, casting golden hues across the pavement, the biker club's engines growled softly in the distance. The leader approached, handing the veteran a small metal carved with an eagle soaring above mountains. He explained it was a symbol of resilience, given to those who carried heavy memories with grace. The veteran's hands trembled as he accepted it, eyes glistening beneath the fading light. The influencer watched the exchange, feeling his chest tighten with admiration. In that moment, he realized some battles never end, but neither do the opportunities to honor those who fight them. Months later, the influencer decided to revisit the parking lot where everything began. He stood alone beneath flickering lights, the asphalt still bearing faint tire marks from the biker club's last gathering. He closed his eyes and replayed the scene, not with shame, but with gratitude for the lesson carved into his soul. He placed the first faded patch the bikers had given him onto the concrete, resting it gently like a tribute. His reflection shimmered in a puddle nearby, showing not the performer he once was, but the man he had become. The veteran eventually joined him, walking with a familiar, determined limp. They stood side by side, silence speaking louder than words. The veteran asked if he regretted the humiliation that day. The influencer exhaled deeply before answering. He admitted the regret for causing pain, but confessed he was thankful for the growth it forced. Without that moment of shame, he might never have learned the power of empathy. The veteran nodded thoughtfully, acknowledging that growth often sprouts from uncomfortable soil. The roar of engines soon echoed across the lot as the biker club rolled in, headlights illuminating the scene like spotlights on a final chapter. The leader dismounted and handed the influencer one last patch. This one was completely unique, stitched with a hand clasping another. It symbolized advocacy, brotherhood, and the responsibility to protect dignity wherever it is threatened. The influencer pressed it to his chest, feeling the weight and warmth of its meaning sink into his heartbeat. Together, they formed a circle, each biker placing a hand on the veteran's shoulder and then on the influencer's. The leader spoke solemn words about legacy, not the kind written in digital numbers or revenue, but in lives touched and eyes opened. The influencer felt tears stream down his cheeks, not from sadness, but from a sense of belonging he had never known. The veteran closed his eyes, breathing deeply, letting the moment heal wounds invisible to the world. As the engines roared and the circle dispersed, the influencer looked up at the night sky. Stars flickered like reminders that even in darkness, light persists. He whispered a promise to continue defending dignity, to listen before laughing, to use his platform not for attention, but for awareness. The veteran placed a steady hand on his shoulder, giving a final nod of approval. And as they walked away together, the parking lot no longer felt like the scene of a mistake. It felt like sacred ground where transformation bloomed, where a limp taught a lesson, and where an influencer learned that honor is not found in views, but in the hearts we choose to lift. As the years passed, the influencer, the veteran, and the biker club became living proof that a single moment of cruelty can be transformed into a lifetime of compassion. The parking lot faded into memory, but the lesson born there deepened with every person they helped. Strangers who once only watched now participated, offering support to veterans in their own communities, proving that empathy spreads quietly but powerfully. The influencer often returned to that same spot, not to relive shame, but to remember where his true journey began, where silence spoke louder than laughter, and where dignity reclaimed its throne. The veteran continued walking his road with a familiar limp, but no longer alone. Each step carried the weight of battles won, both visible and invisible. Instead of being mocked for his scars, he became a pillar for those learning to carry their own. At community events, children looked to him with admiration, learning through his quiet courage that strength is not the absence of pain, but the perseverance to keep moving forward. His resilience stitched itself into the hearts of every listener, reminding them that healing grows in the presence of understanding. Meanwhile, the influencer's voice evolved into something meaningful. His platform became a sanctuary for honesty, where numbers mattered less than the lives touched. He taught that being seen does not require perfection, only authenticity. Stories poured in from viewers across the globe, sharing how one video inspired them to apologize, to listen, to care a little deeper. Those messages became milestones, each one marking progress, not measured by algorithms, but by human connection. And in those moments, he understood that true influence begins with compassion, not cameras. The biker club, once mistaken for intimidation, became symbols of honor across the community. They crossed highways not to chase trouble, but to protect those whose voices had been drowned by cruelty. Their engines echoed ancient values: loyalty, vigilance, and the belief that no one should stand alone against humiliation. People who once judged them now saluted them, finally seeing the heart beneath the leather. Together, they helped rebuild the quiet corners of society where kindness had been forgotten. So, the next time you see someone walking with a limp, whether on their legs, in their heart, or behind their eyes, remember this story. Because compassion is not measured by what we feel, but by how we act when no one is watching. And if this message touched you, consider joining this growing movement of empathy. Subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and share your thoughts below. Together, we can ensure that every voice is heard, every scar respected, and every story honored, one choice at a time.